Today I'm going to teach you how to fix a hairline with light corners like this. You see my boy, he got super light corners, and we're going to show you how to make a hairline with a straight hairline like this from something like that. So first off, we always want to pick everything out. Whenever you're starting a haircut, it's like art, right? It's like a clean canvas. So you want to clean the canvas by combing the hair out, picking the hair out, whatever it is that may be. Now we're going to go ahead and cut everything down. He wants his hair short, like wavelength. So we're going to cut it down against the grain first to get it low, right? Because we want it low enough where I can train it to go forward. So if I go from how it is now and just cut it wavelength, it might leave patches and things like that. So I cut it against the grain to where it's low enough where I can actually train the hair. As you can see, I'm combing everything with the grain. So then now I can go with a 1.5 on some detachable clippers. And now I can go ahead and go with the grain because now I've trained the hair and I've forced the hair to go a certain way. So this will really help when you're cutting hair down to wavelength to prevent patches and things like that. So as you can see, I'm just going with the grain, making sure everything is with the grain and making sure everything is going smoothly. You can see I'm kind of going diagonal sometimes because the hair doesn't always just grow straight. So if you ever go straight and the grain is going diagonal, that can also cause some friction in some spots, right? So now I'm taking a hard brush and I'm going to go ahead and brush the hair with the grain. So the reason I'm using a hard brush is because his hair is used to sticking up and it's trained to stick up because as you can see, he had a bush. So using this hard brush, I can go ahead and brush everything down with the grain and force everything to lay down with the grain again. And then I'm going over the whole head with the same guard again, which is a 1.5 with a detachable clipper. So we're going to go ahead and do all that again. Now we're going to go ahead. I don't know what motion that is. Whoa, now. That's kind of no day. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and use some waving mousse and put that in his hair. And then we're going to go ahead and rub that in his head. So you just kind of put some on there and I rub it in the hair with the grain. Again, everything is with the grain to reinforce the waves that he's trying to have. And then we're going to go ahead and brush everything again with the mousse now. And this is going to style the hair and this is going to force the hair to go in the style that I'm brushing it because the mousse is going to loosen up his hair. And then we're going to go ahead and put a do-rag on him and blow dry it. And that's going to lock the hair in place of where I put it. So I do this for every one of my clients that has short hair. I always do this process. It just gives the hair a nice finished look, a clean look, lays everything down nicely, and it locks it in where I want it to be. So we go ahead and put the do-rag on. We kind of caress his head to lay everything down. But this is just to, sometimes hair can still stick up through the do-rag, so we want to force it to lay down. So now we're going ahead and we're using a blow dryer. And as I'm blow drying his hair, you can see I'm kind of rubbing his hair in place as well, just to, again, force the hair to lay with the grain in the direction that I want it to go. And then I kind of just always move the blow dryer around. Now, if you have like one of those seated blow dryers, you can use that where the client just sits under the seat. Me, I don't have one of those, so I use the blow dryer, but I try to make sure my client is very comfortable. So as you can see, I'm kind of always moving the blow dryer around. Right, I don't want to just sit the blow dryer on his head and then it gets too hot in one area. So I'm always kind of moving this around, and then this takes about 3 to 5 minutes. I usually let it go for a whole song. I'll be listening to music. And now as you can see, everything is laid down nicely and I can start to analyze where I'm going to put this hairline at. So as you can see, I'm kind of using my finger to give myself an idea of where I'm going to do with this hairline. So now I have some holding spray. And I'm using an enhancement card, and I'm going to go ahead and spray holding spray on the hairline everywhere that I'm going to line it up. He's going to keep his C cups, so we're going to line everything up there. So I'm spraying all of that. Now I use the card so the spray doesn't get all over their face. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the back fade. So the first thing I do when fading the back is I do the bald line. He's doing a low mid taper. So I'm making the bald line, and I'm coming with the grain. And as you can see, I have my clipper facing forward. I'm not dragging it down like how I would do with a shape up. I'm kind of pushing up to it, right? And that makes my first bald line. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this 1.5 guard, and I'm going ahead and I'm going against the grain, and I'm going to flick out kind of at his occipital bone. Right there where that lump in his head is, I'm going to go ahead and flick out there, and then I'm going to open the guard up and kind of flick away at the top of that as well. This is just kind of laying the foundation of I want to make the top line and the top fade already finished, so then I can just kind of fade down and stay under it. That way the baldness to the bulk is kind of already blended. So I'm going ahead and starting that blend first. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead with my lever open, no guard, and I'm making my first guideline. I'm going to make this about 1 inch. I'd like to come a little bit higher on the back of the neck. So we're making that about 1 inch, and then we're going to go ahead and, mind you, you see how I'm kind of going sideways sometimes? You always have to go against the grain when you're fading and when you're going against the grain, right? So sometimes people's hair, it'll grow sideways, it'll grow up or down. So you have to go against whatever way it's growing. Now I go ahead and close my guard all the way, and I'm going to flick out at that bottom line, and then I open it up 1 notch of a lever, and then I'm going to go ahead and flick out a little bit higher. Then I open it up 1 more time and flick out a little bit higher. So this is just lever play, how I take that bottom line out. I put it in with the guard open, and then I close it up, flick at the line, open it 1 more, flick at the line, open it 1 more, flick at the line, do some detail work. And now I'm going to do the same thing with my 1 guard. Now we made this first guideline with the 1.5. So I'm coming with the 1 guard. Everything is completely closed and open. I'm going to be doing lever play. But I come with the 1 guard, and now I'm going to take the line out. So just keep in mind, fading, all fading is a lower length of hair going to a higher length of hair. So remember, I used a 1.5 to make that first initial guideline that opened up the whole back of the neck. So in order to take this line out that's under, what's under a 1.5? Well, what's under a 1.5 is a 1. So I'm going to use the 1, and I'm going to take out that line. And what's under a 1, the no guard lever open or a 0 guard. I don't really use a 0 guard, but you know, it just goes from lower lengths to higher lengths of hair, and then you kind of flick out at the differences. And you kind of want to think like each other hair should be like, 1 hair should be dark and 1 hair should be light, right? It's like 1 hair is dark, 1 hair is light, 1 hair is dark, 1 hair is light, and that's kind of how the blend should be, right? That's what you want to kind of have in your mind, of like every other hair is dark and then every other hair is light, so it kind of blends all together, right? So right now I'm just doing some lever play again. I'm closing and opening my clipper, using my 1, using my guard completely open, and I'm just kind of detailing work now. So first you make the guidelines, you take the guidelines out. Now I'm just doing lever play with my 1 guard and my no guard, and I'm just using my corners to kind of do some detail work. I'm opening my lever, I'm closing my lever wherever I need to be, and I'm using the corners to flick everything, all right? So that is the back fade done. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the lineup. Now for his hairline like this, I'm going to go ahead and start on the sides. So as you can see, I'm starting right here on the side, and I'm angling the sidebar towards his eye, right? I want to angle it towards his eye. Now I'm going to go ahead at the bottom of that sidebar, and I'm going to go in halfway with my blade, and then I'm going to hit the bottom where the sideburn is, and then when I get to the curve, I hit the swerve, right? So as soon as I get to that curve, I'm going to hit the swerve. So I'm coming in, half my blade straight, and then when I get to the curve, I'm using my corner of my blade, and I'm doing like a swerve-like motion with my hand. Now how I do this swerve-like motion, you can see I plant my finger on the skin, and then I kind of move the blade around, right? That way you don't have your hand completely off of the person, and then you're kind of just shaping it up, right? You want to use your fingers and your hands as like a pivot. It's like a pivot foot as you were in basketball, right? So when you play basketball, you can move 1 foot around, you know, without moving the other foot. So use this as like a pivot. You want to place your hand on your client's face. That way you have less error. You have less room to mess up. And you're kind of just moving the clipper in that swerve-like motion there, right? And that's how we go ahead and get those nice C-cups for you. So again, when you get to the curve, you hit the swerve. Same thing right here, right? I'm using my middle finger as my pivot, and I'm kind of moving the trimmer like this. I'm using this motion with my fingers to move the trimmer in that swerve, like in that curve, right? So then I can curve that line around the ear, and that's kind of how I do all my curves, with the back of the ear, with the front, you know, with the C-cup, everything like that, right? So make sure to place your fingers on the client's face or head to get you some stability when you're doing these lineups. And now I'm just kind of doing some detail work on the hairline. I'm making sure everything is even. We want to make sure everything is symmetrical, so we're going to line up these sidebars to make sure they line up properly. So just how you do detail work on the fade, you want to do detail work on a lineup. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the back of the neck. I didn't show this, but I did spray Holden spray after I faded on the back of the neck, and then I let it dry while I was doing the front. So we're just going to go ahead and make a straight line, and then when we get to the curve, we hit the swerve. So, you know, just making a straight line. We kind of want to make it an angle. We want to follow the natural line of where his hair naturally wants to go, and just make a nice clean line there. And then we want to hold the ear down and go ahead and do that swerve-like motion to connect the back to the front. Right, so everything is connected now. And again, if you notice, I'm using some different trimmers. I'm using my gold trimmers. So I use my gold trimmers. They're not as sharp as my black ones. And these are used for the back of the neck, for under the neck, like when I'm doing somebody's beard, like underneath their chin. These are used for making bald guidelines when I'm fading, things like that. It's more for the sensitive areas and debulking, where the black trimmers are specifically for sharp lineups, right? So I do suggest having 2 pairs of trimmers, one super sharp, you see I'm back to my black ones, and then one that's not as sharp for those more sensitive areas. So now we're gonna go ahead and plant the hairline directly in the middle, and we're going over from right to left, and I'm inching my way over, keeping everything connected on the line. So as you can see, I'm gonna hit this multiple times because he has super light spots right here where I'm kind of lining up where there's no hair. There's no hair where I'm lining up. So I'm going back and forth, and I'm hitting it multiple times, and this is how we're looking on that left side, right? So now we're going to go ahead and match the right side. So again, hitting it multiple times, and I'm kind of inching my way over. You can see like half of my blade is making a new line, and half of my blade is on the last line to make sure everything is kind of staying connected to each other, right? And I'm just going straight across, back and forth, and I'm hitting it multiple times because I want to make that prominent line where I can see where that ghost line is supposed to be, right? This is called a ghost line, okay? And basically that's, you can see a lineup right there even though there's not a lot of hair right there. And that basically just comes from the residue of the Holden spray, the sharpness of your clippers. So you kind of have to imagine the line when you're doing those sorts of things. So now we're going to go ahead and hit the mustache. I cut the mustache down with a 1 guard completely closed just to smooth it out with the grain. And I'm just going to go ahead, again, I'm using my not as sharp trimmers, and I'm going to go ahead and tap underneath, and I want to like make it an angle right above his lip. And I'm just hitting it multiple times. Again, I'm scraping, and you can see I'm kind of scraping sideways, right? Because his hair is growing a certain way. So I'm scraping it sideways because when I'm cutting, I want to cut against the grain to make this very sharp, right? So also keep in mind, you can cut against the grain when you're doing shape-ups as well, right? So now I'm hitting the top of the mustache, and I'm kind of pressing and pulling away, and then I'm also going to press down, and I'm going to push down. So you can do multiple techniques. You can kind of press and pull away, or you can press down and push towards the lineup, right? But whatever you need to do, I always try to make the mustache just follow the natural line as much as possible and hit it above the lip so the hair isn't going like in his mouth, and then kind of angle the top of the mustache down a little bit to a point so it's nice and sharp but doesn't look all, you know, unnatural. I like the more natural look. My clients like the natural look. They just want to look sharp. So as you can see, I'm using both techniques there. Now I'm going to go ahead on the side. I'm using going to go start this side fade on this mid taper. So you see I'm making my first guideline, and I want to use the reference point at the top of the ear. That's why I was pointing at his ear, and I'm coming up to the ear. Now I'm going to go ahead and make my first guideline, and I'm using my corners, and I'm kind of making like a kind of circular shape with this first guideline because I want it to kind of be a circle because it's kind of like a mid taper. So he wants the taper to come up some but still be like have the C cup. So you see I'm kind of curving. And now I'm going to take the first guideline out with my lever completely closed. And as you can see, you always have a fade area, but when you stretch the skin, the fade area becomes a lot bigger. So when you stretch the skin, you know you're going to win. And again, I always take the first guideline out by doing my lever completely closed, flicking out, and then opening the lever 1 notch, flicking out, opening the lever again, flicking out to that middle lever, to that middle level of the lever. And then I go ahead and do some detail work. Now I'm putting my 1.5 guard on, and I'm going to go ahead and do that same kind of motion. I want to use that same, I want to make that same circular shape So I'm only using my corners here to kind of make that circular shape like how I did with the first guideline. And I'm keeping my comb in my hand, always recombing where I need to. And I'm just kind of going against the grain, working this guideline out piece by piece. It's not going to be like a completely clean guideline. You kind of have to use your eyes and kind of have that barber eye to see. It's not going to be like super clean where you can see everything, but you can see the blend is slowly coming together where the top is blending into the top of the hair, and now it's like you can see the blend is kind of going into where the waves will be. Now I'm going to put my one guard on, and I'm going to take out this middle line right here. And again, same thing, one guard completely closed. I'm stretching the skin. I'm using my corner, and I'm flicking out at that area where I want to make that transition from bald to going into that 1.5. So I'm going to take that middle area out with my one completely closed. Now, sometimes I like to go with the grain. This kind of smooths everything down. This makes everything nice and smooth. So when I go ahead and go against the grain, it makes it easier to blend. It makes it easier to fade, and it looks nicer, right? So don't be afraid to, with certain hair textures, go ahead and go with the grain to kind of smooth everything out. And now I'm using my lever open, and I'm kind of doing some detail work because, again, we went with a 1.5 to blend in that top of the bulk. So now I'm using some lever play, and I'm going to go ahead and use lever play to do detail work with the 1. And now I'm doing the same thing with no guard. I'm doing some lever play. You see I'm opening my lever. I'm closing my lever. I'm opening it 1 notch. I'm opening it halfway. I'm stretching the skin, and I'm just doing detail work. This is where you look at your blend, and you look at some of the dark spots, and then you go and you kind of touch at those dark spots to make the blend that much nicer with the detail work. And after I blend, I always redo the shape up, right? But I hit it very lightly. I don't want to make his skin irritated. But after I blend, I do the shape up first so I can blend around the shape up. And then after I blend, I hit the shape up again so it's nice and sharp. Now I'm coming in with some enhancements, and I'm going to go ahead, and when I use enhancements, I make sure to always be constantly moving my hand. You see how I'm constantly moving my hand back and forth? This allows the spray to get a nice even spread, and I have the setting on my sprayer at a low setting as well. So it's a very low setting because I don't want to overspray and make this thing too dark where he looks painted on, right? And you also saw the method where I was kind of tapping. I call that the double tap, the trigger finger, right? So you see right there where I'm kind of like tapping. I kind of tap because I want things to be darker, but I don't want to overspray and be too dark. So if I'm holding the gun down, if I'm holding the trigger down, I'm constantly moving my hand if I'm holding the trigger. If I want to get some specific spots and get it more darker, I'm using that trigger finger, and I'm kind of tapping. So we never get no overspray, right? We don't want to overspray this. And again, I'm just using my enhancement to cover that up. And this is how he's looking in the mirror with the enhancements, right? You can see from a distance, everything looks completely fine, completely natural. He has a full hairline. Now, I did that because, I got the ring light all in his face, so you can kind of see where it's lighter at, where I spray at. But most of the time when you're walking around in the real world, people aren't going to have a big-ass ring light shining in your face to see your enhancements, right? So right there, I just showed you that I want to spray these fibers on, and I want to spray them very lightly. I don't want to overly spray and use too much spray. Again, I'm all about making enhancements look natural. So I'm spraying very lightly, and I'm trying to spray very evenly. You don't want to press down too hard when you're applying enhancements. You want to use little small pumps to go ahead and let the fibers kind of spray out very lightly so you don't overspray. And again, I'm just putting my card on a little bit. So here's a little trick with the enhancements. When I use the spray, I put the enhancement card directly on the hairline, and I use the ink spray. But when I use fibers, I actually put the card slightly off of the hairline. That way, and then I go and wipe all the residue. So that way, when I go and reshape everything up, it's going to be nice and sharp because I'm really shaping up those excess fibers. So after I do the spray and the fibers, I go ahead and spray it again with some holding spray and lock it in with the hair dryer. And then I go and reshape everything up. And this is where I will be shaping up like those excess fibers to make everything nice and sharp. But you can see it's not super dark. It's not overly sprayed. Like everything looks nice and natural. And that's how we want it to look. I don't want my hairlines to look like it's painted on. People that come to me, they have, you know, hairline mess ups. They have light corners, balding spots. And the last thing they want is their hairline to look painted on or sprayed on, right? Even though that's what they're getting, they want it to look natural. So we go ahead and we finish that off by using the enhancements and going ahead and reshaping everything up. Now I'm going to hit everything with the razor. So I lay his head back and I'm stretching the skin. I'm holding my razor at a 45-degree angle, and you know, I'm scraping towards the hairline. And the biggest thing about using a razor is the stretch of the skin. When you stretch the skin, you know you're going to win, right? I can't say that enough. When you stretch the skin, you know you're going to win. And also, when I'm getting in that C cup, I'm using the corner of my blade, of my straight razor blade, to go ahead and hit that corner. So I stretch the skin long enough to where I can go ahead and use my corner, and when I let the stretch go, it'll be straight, right? So this is how everything's looking finished. You can see my guy's giving me the nod of approval. I wipe everything off. You see, ain't no enhancements coming off. I locked it in with the hold and spray. Now I go ahead and wipe everything off. This is kind of my final touches here. I take the cape off. I wipe that off. And I'm going to go ahead and get the bottom of his neck. You can see that back taper is looking nice and clean. Wipe him off again. Spray him with some burn sauce. Spray him with that spice ball. Get underneath the neck. Spray the face. I also, you know, shaped up underneath his neck and his chin and stuff. And then I'm going to go ahead and spray him with some oil sheen to give it that nice finished look. And he paid me $130 for this haircut. $130 for this haircut. And as you can see, everything's looking nice. Everything's looking realistic. Not too dark, not too light. Yes, sir. My man came in looking crazy. You see, he got them light spots in his corners, bro. He was not confident. He was looking rough. He was looking real scruff. But now I got him feeling like $1,000,000. Y'all know what's going on, man. You see, we put that pressure on him. You see hairline looking full. Everything looking natural. Nice C cups. Nice mid taper. You know what I'm saying? My man's looking fresh. So this how you do that, man. This how you do a taper the pressure way. This how you fix hairlines the pressure way. Lock in. Let's shoot for 500 likes, and I'm going to go ahead and start dropping some more of these. Subscribe and comment what you think. Comment any tips and tricks for anybody else learning how to cut hair. And let me know what type of haircut you want to see next, man. I'll see y'all soon. Lock in.